Software FM, who has continuously gone up to Jorgen and said, hey, have you considered talking about your feelings and about what's happened? And Jorgen's continuously gone, I need to leave now. Hello, I am Jessie, the Sleepy Koala, and welcome. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas, everybody, because I know I did, because, drumroll please, we got the last Skyward flight novella, Evershore, on the 28th of December. What a lovely Christmas present for us all to get just after Christmas this year. Not only because it is the last book in this triplet of novellas, but also because it is the last book we will get in the Skyward series till 2023 when Defiant will come out. Which, considering it is just the start of 2022, is a bit of a while away. So I hope we all enjoyed our plethora of Skyward-based material because we're not getting anything else for quite a while soon. But with the release of Evershore, we have finally got my last recap for the next little while. This episode will contain spoilers for only the Skyward Flight novellas. I know that Cytonic is now out, but in order to preserve the three novellas together, I will not be talking about any spoilers that might come up for the novellas in Cytonic itself. So without further ado, today I will be doing a recap of the third Skyward Flight novella, Evershore, which is by Brandon Sanderson and Janci Patterson, who I believe wrote most of the book, and then Brandon and Janci bounced them back and forth. I don't know why I'm doing this, while they edited them. Yeah. Our story starts us off at the very end of ReDawn, and we ended ReDawn on a high. It was very explosive. Oh no, that was a really terrible joke. Because Jorgen's parents and half the assembly has just been exploded and destroyed by the superiority. Jorgen is a wreck who also doesn't know how to deal with feelings, but we already knew this from earlier books. But Jorgen is a wreck and decides instead of dealing with any emotion that he has, he's instead gonna go bully the DDF into giving him power and putting him in charge. And he does this by really flimsy logic.
That Cobb gave him an order, so he was the last person Cobb gave an order to, so therefore he is in charge because Cobb's last order stands.
Logic. That's some logic for you. So Jorgen and his team go back to Detritus instead of going back to ReDawn, but it's okay. They can be put on the back burner. They can just wait, you know, that intergalactic alliance, that can just wait because Jorgen has to yell at some people. Jorgen goes back and yells at Stoff, who is the Vice Admiral now in charge while Cobb isn't there, and Stoff promptly gives him power and leaves because he doesn't know what to do. The Assembly try to contact Jorgen, who knows the rules back to front, so he uses that knowledge to put them on the back burner for 2 days because the rules say he has 2 days to respond to them, so he's going to use that time wisely. While he waits, he starts learning more Cytonic stuff with Atlantic. Atlantic is very well versed in communication and being able to overhear what other people are saying in the nowhere and also to find other Cytonic beings. Jorgen is pretty rubbish at this, honestly. He's not very good, and he's trying to listen to Atlantic's explanation of how she does it, and he just doesn't get it. It's just not clicking for him. So he tries something very slightly different, and he picks up on things, like a weather broadcast. Very exciting news that he picked up on. But then he picks up on a distress call, sort of, from the kitsen on the planet Evershore, who have somehow ended up with their humans and want to give them back now, please. After discussing this with people in command, Jorgen continues to have more power than he should, and takes his flight and goes to Evershore, where they are promptly terrified by the idea of clouds, and whether they can fly through them. Kuda, who has gone with them, finds this endlessly amusing. Once they reach the ground and marvel over what an ocean is, they meet up with Corey, who is the one who sent out the signal, and if you remember back from Starsight, was Hesho's second in command, who took over once Hesho died. While Jorgen is talking with Corey on the beach, another group of kitsen turn up, and they are very Spencer-like in they are very aggressive for really no reason whatsoever. They are led by Goro, who thinks that the humans are there to invade them and attack them and take over, which, to be fair, the kitsen have a history of the humans invading them and attacking them and taking over. So it's not from nowhere that Goro is coming from. He does have a bit of a point in terms of their history, but he comes across as the comedic relief who everyone is very confused by and are kind of terrified of because they think he's going to shoot them. After some back and forth banter between Cory and Goro, they come to a conclusion that they have to go talk to the council. But before they go to the council, they have to have a giant feast because that is the tradition for when people are challenged to mortal combat, is you have to feed them first. And they do actually have a very good explanation for this because then their opponent will be sluggish because they ate all the food. Before they have the feast, firstly, they go to visit Cobb and Gran Gran. Cobb and Gran Gran are asleep? Unconscious? Not quite sure. We're just not quite sure. But Atlantic cannot sense any Cytonic presence from Gran Gran, which is weird because you should still be able to do that even if a Cytonic is asleep, unconscious, who knows? But she can't sense anything, which calls into question if they really are Cobb and Gran Gran. But they decide pretty quickly that is Cobb and Gran Gran. They find out that Cobb and Gran Gran turned up on this planet inside the kitsen's library in front of a wall covered in a bunch of weird patterns that we have now seen in multiple places, like inside the Delver Shell, in the detritus caves. There was some in the falling structure that Ned has to go through with Spencer back in the first book. We've seen these markings before, they keep popping up. And what also popped up was Gran Gran and Cobb right outside them. Now that they have found their missing humans, as the kitsen put it, they try and take them back to detritus, but their physical health starts deteriorating rapidly as they try and load them onto the medical ships, so they have to keep them on the kitsen planet for now, and we will come back to them later. Meanwhile, we have the feast. The feast goes well enough, I guess, and then we have the council meeting. Of course, all the kitsen are about 20 centimeters high. They are very, very small. And as you can imagine, all of our humans are very, very tall. So fitting them into the buildings is not super easy. So for the actual meeting, we only have Jorgen, Atlantic, and FM who can even fit into this council chamber. And they're sitting on the floor, huddled up against each other because there's so little room. Jorgen is not doing super well during this meeting. He's stressed. To be fair, it's a very stressful situation. But of course, he has not dealt with any of the emotions of his parents dying in the last book, and that is all starting to come to a head in his mind. And all of this stuff is just brewing and brewing and brewing and brewing, and then it explodes. He explodes in the middle of the council chambers and just throws a bunch of mind blades out because apparently he can do that. And everyone is kind of terrified of him because of it. He then gives a speech and runs away because, again, doesn't know how to deal with emotions. Apparently the speech is actually kind of what they needed to hear, and they're sort of leaning in their favor. So it all sort of worked out well. Jorgen and FM kind of have a deep and meaningful conversation on the beach where FM, who has continuously gone up to Jorgen and said, hey, have you considered talking about your feelings and about what's happened? And Jorgen's continuously gone, I need to leave now. And they finally talk a bit, which is very helpful. After this, Jorgen and a kitsen, Juno, who he met at the feast and who is an expert in cytonics, they go atop of a mountainside because Juno thinks he can help Jorgen with those mind blades that he just chucked at the rest of their assembly and see if he can get Jorgen to control them so he doesn't hurt anybody. Jorgen gets to sit there and meditate and not be calm and continuously be told, you are calm, when he is definitely not calm. But the meditation does actually help, and he is able to manifest mind blades again and is able to practice on rocks instead of people, which is always good and nice. While he is practicing though, he starts feeling some weird stuff in the nowhere. He can feel all these bumps, and they're kind of everywhere, and they're bumps that Atlantic can't feel, so it's kind of really weird. But then he hears Gran Gran's voice, and Gran Gran's talking to him, which he has no idea how to deal with. Jorgen decides to visit the library so he can see where Gran Gran and Cobb went through, and he learns that all of the ancient kitsen Cytonics just disappeared from there one day. They were all there and then they were gone, and nobody knows what's happened to them since. They also have had no more kitsen Cytonics ever since this happened, which they find kind of weird because it's meant to be genetic and it's just never happened again. They don't know what happened. Unfortunately, the superiority have just attacked them as well. So they all have to go and fight the superiority, and they do sort of win. The superiority back off a little bit, but they're still out there and they're waiting for round 2. Jorgen, knowing that they need more flights, they need the backup, they're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the superiority again, goes back to Detritus. And at Detritus, he wants to get Wandering Leaf, the big platform from the last book that they were able to shoot mind blades from and move around, and it was kind of terrifying. And also just get more flights of pilots that he can take with him. After talking to Stuff, he is able to do this because Stuff is kind of a coward and doesn't want to take responsibility for anything, but will take it if Jorgen succeeds. Otherwise, just gonna throw Jorgen under the bus right there. Jorgen takes back what he needs, and there is now this giant platform that is helping them, which is really, really helpful. There is also another Cytonic in this battle that keeps going after Jorgen, who also has Mind Blades, so Jorgen gets to duke it out Avengers style with someone who has the exact same power that he does. Jorgen eventually wins against the other Mind Blade Cytonic, as everyone expected that he would, and they realize that there is now a cannon in the atmosphere, and it's going to come and destroy the planet. These are the same ones that we have seen multiple times now. There was one on ReDawn when the superiority decided they just wanted to destroy ReDawn because they were fighting back. There was also one that's been parked outside Detritus for a very long time that tried to shoot Detritus in Sunreach and hit the new field that came up just in the nick of time. Jorgen, thinking that he might actually be able to help in this situation, maybe goes to Wandering Leaf and clears everybody out. The only person still there is Juno, who has decided to stick around with him because he has a death wish. Jorgen then jumps Wandering Leaf into the path of this cannon and tries to use the Mind Blades to destroy the cannon so that they can save the planet. This does not go well, because by doing so, Jorgen has immediately jumped Wandering Leaf into an inhibitor field, so he can't do anything. Ned comes and saves them both, and they fly away as Wandering Leaf is finally destroyed, and they lose their big advantage and their big platform. There is another ceasefire, and everyone on the retreats to their own side to tend to their wounded and get troops from reserves so that they can go again at another point in this evening. Jorgen goes back to Detritus because he kind of needs another one of those platforms. Rig, very helpfully, has been trying to get these platforms to work now that they understand a bit more how Wandering Leaf works. Unfortunately, he still hasn't been able to do it very well, and even though they have platforms, they are not actually able to move them as of the current time. One thing that is really hindering them is the fact that they lost like a bunch of slugs when their assembly members were blown up because they took a bunch of the Tanic slugs with them to give them to the superiority, because that was a very good idea of theirs. They know that there are more slugs down in the Detritus caves. They're just really having trouble finding them because those cave systems are enormous and the slugs are quite hidden. Jorgen, in a feat of amazingness, is able to call all the slugs to him on the platform with the help of his friendly slugs that have come with him. They join together in harmony and friendship and call all of these other slugs from the caves up to the platform, and they just flood the place. There are so many slugs there now. So many slugs that they can use. While Jorgen's been doing this, he's been able to feel these bumps again, and is still not quite sure what they are, but somehow he reaches out and realizes they are minds. They are the minds of the people around him. Cytonics should not be able to touch the minds of people around them. They can only talk to other Cytonics, except Jorgen, because he's very powerful and special, and this is one of his Cytonic powers, Jorgen gets all the great powers. He's got mind blades, he can talk to people through their minds, he can just call a bunch of slugs, he can find the weather station. These are great powers to have. Now that he has figured out he can touch and maybe talk to people in their minds, he reaches out to Rig, who is close by, after he attempted to warn him that he was going to do something really stupid, and then Rig got confused, then Jorgen got confused, then Rig got confused, and anyway, this continued in a circle. But Jorgen reaches out to Rig and touches his mind and scares the crap out of him by doing so, but probably less of a crap than if he hadn't given any warning at all, so I guess his warning did actually work in the end. Jorgen then goes back to Evershore and he decides he needs to go back to the library. He has to try and figure out what these voices are that he's been hearing bits and pieces of throughout this novel that I have forgotten to mention up till now, and see if he can do something to figure out what happened with Groundgun and Cobb and these voices. When he gets to the library, he figures out that the voices are the kitsen Cytonics that disappeared, and they are stuck on the other side of this portal, which is locked. Jorgen has to be very careful with the portal because Cytonics can fall through it, as Spencer told him when they chatted at one point. Jorgen is able to sense the way that the portal is intertwined and is able to move very small parts of it so that the Cytonics can get through. This is with the help of Cytonics on the other side who figure out what he's doing, and they kind of go from either side, just creating a little hole, just a little one that all the Cytonics can go through. This also brings back Cobb and Gran, who are very happy to finally be awake again. Unfortunately, at that moment, they find out that there is a very familiar and very scary ship on the way to Evershore. That ship being a Lifebuster. Remember those back from the first book? Yeah, the Lifebusters were scary. Alanic, however, is a Cytonic that is well-versed in hyperjumping, so she is able to save the day, much like Spencer did in the first book. Unfortunately, it was not anywhere near as dramatic, so they just took the Lifebuster and detached it from the ship and then flew it away, and then she jumped back. So everything was fine, the day was saved, except now the Superiority have finally grown some brains and gotten smart and realized that there is more than one island on this planet with kitsen on it, and maybe they shouldn't have been attacking the only one that had their enemies on it, and instead should spread out, because the detritus folk really have no ability to save all of these islands whatsoever. Jorgen goes back to detritus to see if the platforms of Riga is working on are ready to jump, and they are, and it's epic because the platforms jump. All of them. All of the platforms jump. With the planet. The planet jumps to Evershore. It is incredible. It is such a cool moment in the book. It's probably my favorite moment in the book, is the planet jumping and then them realizing what has happened and realizing that detritus was not just a safe haven. It was not just a fortress. It is meant to roam around. It has that ability. It has grav caps. It has its own gravitational force to it. It's not meant to be stationary. It is meant to roam around the galaxy as a freaking planet. And that is awesome. Unfortunately, nobody here understands how astronomy works, and they start affecting the tide of Evershore because it's full of water. It is a planet of islands and water. So they're now affecting all of the oceans because of their gravitational pull. They managed to move the planet so it is no longer directly affecting Evershore. But at this point, the damage is already done, and there are now tidal waves everywhere, going to wash across all of the islands. The detritus folk are helping to get everyone to higher ground at this point, so that they do not die, but at the same time, the Superiority is still attacking them. Everyone's still going to die by the Superiority and from their ships. Jorgen realizes there's so many different alien races at this point in this battle. You've got the humans, you've got the kitsen, you've got the Erdai who have come to help because they happen to be on Wandering Leaf at the time. So many different races that don't speak the same language. Luckily, Jorgen can talk in people's minds and is able to conduct this battle like a conductor would conduct an orchestra, And by doing so, they are able to make the superiority forces finally pull back and disappear, and the day is won. After the battle, we get the aftermath. The aftermath being the conversation Jorgen finally has to have with Cobb. Jorgen is not particularly looking forward to this conversation because he's 100% been out of bounds the entire time, and the fact that he's gotten away with anything is insane. So of course his punishment is to be made Vice Admiral by Cobb. And then Cobb steps down and Jorgen becomes Admiral, and we all have to suspend a little bit of disbelief that this is actually happening at the end of the book, where this guy is like 20. And Cobb's explanation is he doesn't know how to deal with the unknown. But that is the end of the book. We end with Evershore saved. We end with presumably another alliance formed with Evershore. We end with detritus in orbit around Evershore, the planet. I can't get over how good that was. It was so good. Just like A+ best part of the book. And we end with Jorgen as now the Admiral of the DDF. This book had so much in it. If you thought that my recap just now was all over the place and chaotic, that's because this book is really kind of all over the place and chaotic. It's good, but there is just so much in it, and all the bits are little bits. It's not split into big moments like ReDawn was, or specific plot lines like Sunreach was. This book is just one thing after another, and you just kind of need everything to make the story make sense. So hopefully I didn't ramble too much for everybody. I had quite a lot of fun doing this. I hope you have enjoyed this Claim the Stars series. I will cap it out with Defiant when the book finally comes out, and with any more novellas that might come out as continuously are teased by Janci and Brandon, which I, for one, would absolutely love. Please give me a Kimmelin novella. Please, I need it. I need a Kimmelin novella so badly. But until next time, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos from me, and I will see you next time. Bye!